Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Project Arc, and today I'm going to illustrate why Ninja Gaiden 3 fails to compete with its predecessors, and why it also fails as a game in and of itself. For whatever reason, I've found many of the video reviewers don't do a very good job of painting what it's like to experience this game. Hence the need for a video by a fan. That being said, as a disclaimer, I'd like to point out that I am by no means an industry professional, nor qualified with a degree in journalism. So take what I say with a grain of salt. I'm just a disappointed fan like so many others. Without further ado, this is why Ninja Gaiden 3 sucks, why Ninja Gaiden's the best. Also, if you find that my video doesn't give enough praise to Ninja Gaiden 1, go check out my other video entitled Shit I Like That You Hate, the Ninja Gaiden episode more specifically. There are a lot of games and expansions to keep track of in the Ninja Gaiden series. For the sake of this video, let's only compare apples to apples. Team Ninja and their first kick at each respective game. Ninja Gaiden 1, 2, and 3. Alright, let's start off with the elephant in the room. And forgive me for my accent, but in mid-2008, Tobunobu Itagaki left Team Ninja as its game designer lead. This man was truly a visionary and may have been one of the main reasons why Ninja Gaiden 3 falters in its direction. But I digress. This isn't a video of causation, but rather of final product. The best way to tackle this topic, I feel, is to do a direct comparison. I'll talk about key similar points in all three games, and in doing so, you might just understand why this game let so many people down. First off is the presentation. This is probably the thing that throws people off the most. Ninja Gaiden 3 has the graphical style and flair that you could expect from any high-scoring title. From over-the-top destruction of expensive vehicles, to the less than subtle blood exploding from your enemies as you carve through their brittle bodies, this game seems elegant enough. But let's compare it to Ninja Gaiden. It had the best graphics of its time, pushed the limits on ideas of combat speed, and had high-impact cutscenes. Do you see a difference in that description? How about the enemies? In Ninja Gaiden, there were a plethora of enemies, constantly evolving and increasing in difficulty. You never got bored. In fact, you dreaded the next time you'd have to face certain enemies again. The boss battles were plentiful and unique. Despite the fact that hack and slash games are plagued with repetition, Team Ninja managed to either hide it or remove it completely from their game. In Ninja Gaiden 3, there are a total of 10, count them 10, basic enemies with occasional color and design alterations. Regardless of how close either Ninja Gaiden 1 or 2 come to this number, they give so much variety to their basic character construction that it becomes pointless to even count. The final keynote of presentation are of course the cutscenes. So here's Ninja Gaiden. And now here's Ninja Gaiden 3. It is obvious which of the two games took real care in immersing the player in the visual atmosphere of the game. Any questions? Now, I feel the story should be separate from presentation when considering Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 1 story goes something like this. Ryu is a ninja. His village is burned down and everyone is dead. He gets stricken down and rises up once again to seek revenge. He has one simple motivation, and he rarely talks. He meets a hot chick, and she's like Buffy the Fiendslayer or something. Turns out Ryu stumbles upon a plot to destroy the planet by awakening the underworld. He takes it upon himself to stop the demons and seeks his revenge. Simple enough, poorly written, and hard to follow at times, but it doesn't make a big fuss, and you don't need it to. It's a simple catalyst for providing dramatic and over-the-top fight sequences. In Ninja Gaiden 2, Ryu gets something stolen from his house, and he wants that shit back. So he kills all the dudes who stole his shit and saves the world in the process. The story sucked, but at least the game was cool to look at. Ninja Gaiden 3 has a soap opera of a story. So Ryu gets called out by terrorists. Ryu's all like, what the fuck? So he kills all the terrorists. Then he sees this guy who likes to monologue. Then this guy curses Ryu and tells him that he's actually a monster, and has some serious moral issues to work through. Then Ryu meets this little girl and grows attached to her, but his arm really hurts. Then he attacks the terrorist secret lab. Turns out they're alchemists. Shit hits the fan and Ryu goes back home to get a better sword. When he's there, his entire village is all well and good out of nowhere, and then he meets his dad. His dad says, "You're fucked, son." Oh, did I mention Ryu fights this thing? Yeah, what the fuck? He meets back up with his pals. This girl asks Ryu to be her daddy. Then they go into the Arctic or something. Then it turns out that Scientist is the main bad guy the whole time. Then Ryu jumps onto a jet. Ryu then kills that masked guy who's actually this guy's brother and is also this girl's actual father, which then sets off a chain reaction to turn this girl into one of the three final bosses. The three final bosses being this guy turned into a monster, this guy coming back from the dead, and the girl turned into this thing. Oh yeah, and Ryu's arm hurts the whole time. The shitty story that has always been present in Ninja Gaiden is in fact the main focus of Ninja Gaiden 3. Wrong! The story sucks. The dialogue sucks. The characterization is bland and is garbage. Oh, and then I mentioned Ryu says,
I just never thought of being a father.
what the fuck, game? What the fuck? You don't make the worst part of your previous title the most important part. You guys suck at making stories and are good at making tits bounce. So guess what? You should make tits bounce. Oh, and by the way, the questions of morality is barely resolved. The answer to whether or not Ryu is a cold-hearted killer or a hero is resolved as follows. You're a ninja, so yeah, you're kind of both. Next, let's talk about the most important point of all, the gameplay. Ninja Gaiden 3 made 3 fatal errors in its design: repetitive gameplay, steel on bone, and adjustments to difficulty. Most critics agree with me on 2 of those points, so hopefully you're sold on them. Ninja Gaiden was really hard. That was part of its lasting appeal. Elitism. Having outrageous amounts of difficulty made you feel part of an elite few who actually beat Ninja Gaiden. We worked our asses off to beat these games even on normal. It gave people something to talk about well after the game had left the public mind. Ninja Gaiden 2 was really no different. Ninja Gaiden 3, however, tried to garner mass appeal with adjusting the difficulty down. Even on hard, most veteran players won't have more than a few parts that cause them frustration. From here, though, I'd like to make 2 little nitpicks about the gameplay and its relation to difficulty. From my experience on the harder difficulties of Ninja Gaiden 3, most of the difficulty actually comes from being cheap, using stuff like projectiles to interrupt combos, for instance. This wouldn't be a problem with Ninja Gaiden 1's game engine, because you could always interrupt any of your enemy's attacks so long as you blocked in time. It felt like reaction gameplay, right on the edge of your seat, focusing on every tiny clue as to when the proper time was to strike or block. In Ninja Gaiden 3, combos are necessary to deal with hordes of enemies that get sent your way. But you can't interrupt many of your enemies' attacks until after they've completed their own combos. This means you have to play more predictive than reactive style of play. My second gripe is with a change in style. Ninja Gaiden 1 had the precision and combo necessity that only fighting games could provide. Team Ninja's history with the Dead or Alive series is very apparent in their near-perfect execution of combat in previous titles. Ninja Gaiden 3 is not precise at all. Combos become an afterthought and not necessary to success. This small difference changes Ninja Gaiden from attention-consuming to boring. I can promise you, these small differences made a huge and lasting impression on me. One way to mitigate difficulty was once Ryu's combo really gets going, he'll have between 3 to 10 seconds of temporary invincibility for simply the sake of showing off Ryu being cool. This means you're less inclined to actually use the block because you're more likely to succeed from mashing the X button and praying than actually blocking or countering. In my playthrough of Ninja Gaiden, I rarely countered. I mostly dodged and mashed the X and Y buttons. Steel on Bone was a selling point in Ninja Gaiden 3 this time around. Simply put, Team Ninja attempted to immerse players by having them feel as if they're actually cutting through bones of your opponent. This doesn't work for 2 reasons. 1, that's a disgusting concept. Most people don't get a rush of excitement at the prospect of actually knowing what it feels like to cut through human bones. Secondly, tapping the X or Y button rapidly does not properly simulate cutting through a person. This isn't to say trying out new things is a bad idea. Ninja Gaiden 2 did this successfully with 2 new concepts: obliteration technique, which is just a fancy way of saying finishing move, and dismembered limbs. While I don't care much for over-the-top gore, both of these struck a good chord with many fans of the series. Finally, the last thing about the gameplay is repetition. This game has you fighting the same waves of enemies over and over and over and over and over again, until finally the game does something new, like giving you a bow or introducing a new cool enemy. Then you get excited for about 5 minutes. 50 minutes later, you're already sick of the new thing because they forced it down your throat over 10 times. As well, these new things are mandatory. It's not like Ninja Gaiden 1 or 2, where they gave you a choice in how to take care of enemies. Elevated enemies must be killed with a bow, ground forces with your sword. Use your Ninpo to kill all enemies, and use your ultimate technique frequently just to get through the game faster. Speaking of Ninpo, in Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2, Ninpo was a hugely valuable resource. You never knew when to use it or save it. It was a high point of anxiety for most players, and it felt strategic. Ninpo got turned into a repeat animation for an entire 8-hour campaign that was either used or not. You can't save it up and wait for boss fights to help you. Definitely not a good choice on their part. In conclusion, I'll sum it all up with a simple sentence. Ninja Gaiden 3 was an attempt at appealing to a small portion of their fanbase, casual gamers. The main overarching ideas of this game sound like something a casual, ignorant fan might want from this franchise. Make it easier. I think Ryu should really think about what he's done and the moral implications. And I really wish I could feel like a complete badass instead of getting my ass handed to me in this game. On paper, these ideas don't suck. In practice, Team Ninja couldn't deliver on what they wanted their game to be and what fans wanted it to be. Thank you guys so much for watching. For my full playthrough of the game, check out the links in the description. As always, I'll see you guys next time.
I just never thought of being a father. I'm touched.